Hello, Dr. Scott. My name is Kevin Doran. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to my sports management 2P65 ePortfolio. Let's get started. Before I start, I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself so you can understand where I'm coming from when I'm talking about my goals in my portfolio. I come from a very small town called East Gwillimbury, which is just outside of Newmarket, Ontario, and my whole life has been surrounded by sports. I've played everything from AAA baseball. I've been the captain of 3 hockey teams, track and field, cross country, school volleyball, school basketball, everything you can think of, I tried to play. As my father said, to try to play as many sports as you can, and then when you get into high school, you choose one and you excel at that. And golf is my sport that I excelled at. As we talked in the class the other day, golf has been my life. My whole goal when I got into high school was to get a scholarship in the United States. And it was tough because the Americans, obviously, they have nicer weather. The coaches have to give them less scholarship money as technically I'm an international student. So the Canadians are always behind the 8 ball when it comes to golf scholarships. And in grade 11, I had the very unfortunate event of both my lungs collapsing. And that was described as the doctor said, that happens to tall, lanky teenage boys. So unfortunately, I suffered from that. I was in the hospital for over 3 weeks. I'd be lying to say if I had any fun at all, but it did teach me that everything happens for a reason, and that's life. I was lucky enough to be recruited by 2 schools in the United States, Weber International University in Central Florida and Vanguard University just outside of Los Angeles, California. But I did not take it due to the financial reasons, as it's very expensive for a Canadian student to go down south if you do not get a lot of scholarship money. So I enrolled at Brock. So after enrolling in Brock Sports Management and attending the 1P94 conference and talking to my peers, talking to pros, I feel like that I would really like to work at a sport organization in the United States. And as you see the 4 schools there on the screen, Louisiana State University, West Virginia University, the University of South Florida, and the University of Tennessee at Knoxville are 4 schools that I will be applying to go on an exchange in my 3rd year. And the exchange is just not an amazing resume builder, but I feel like I would love to get my foot into the door to a major sporting team to work on after university. When I think about why did I choose Brock, I felt like Brock put me in the best position to set me up for success. And on the screen there you see Kyle Dubas, the GM of the Leafs, and I feel like for a lot of people in the Brock Sports Management program, he is an inspiration for many people. Realistically, not everyone is going to be the next general manager of an NHL franchise, but I feel like Dubas sets the standard for it's possible, and we can do it. And when I'm looking at sport management, I have to see how is it going to make me a better person? How is it going to make me a better sport manager and a sport management student? And this has really changed my view on what I want to do in SPMA overall. It's changed my view in that sport marketing is related to everything in sports management. It's all about communication, and it really emphasizes that sports itself and the sports business is a people business. It's all about people, and I feel like learning that and being able to tie that in with the other subjects that I'm taking, whether it's law or entrepreneurship or anything, it really emphasizes and makes me think about how sport marketing in this class really helps me with my other subjects and will help me future later on in life after Brock and my sports management career. On not just your experiences in your classroom, but also the experiences that are out of the classroom. I believe that the Gibbs reflective cycle is the most effective cycle when it comes to reflecting on learning inside and outside of the classrooms. The different stages of describing, feeling, evaluating, analyzing, concluding, and planning are 6 different things that I believe are very effective for me to be able to get the most out of what I learn. Being able to evaluate what I liked about the experience, analyzing what I liked about the experience when it comes to what I'm learning in the classroom, and concluding and drawing and tapping into resources that I know that will be helpful in my learning journey. So this reflective cycle, I feel like, is the most effective when it comes to my experience and how I'm able to tap into the knowledge of the classroom and the different things that we're learning and the different opportunities for me to learn and to develop myself inside and outside of the classroom. I found it pretty cool as you obviously talked about your time in Australia. My uncle is from Australia as he married an Australian, obviously, so I have blood relatives who live in Australia, Brisbane to be exact. And while I was there visiting, we saw a Brisbane Broncos game. So it was cool as you circle back now talking about your time in Australia. I could relate to it in some way, obviously, nothing close to you. But I kind of enjoyed how you talked about the Australia sports sector because I like to see Canada and Australia somewhat similar, obviously, complete different side of the world. The weather obviously is quite different, but as we're Commonwealth nations, both our countries are spread out between wide varieties. We are both on the east and west coast of our country. We're both very large countries. Our populations are very similar. So I found it kind of cool how you discussed the Australian sports sector, mentioning how it's worth over $8 billion a year, employs in excess of 100,000 people. It generates $1 billion in tax revenue, makes us large significance to GDP, almost like Canada and hockey, football in the United States. And when we look at sport marketing, the definition goes into the trends and wants of a sports consumer. That's exactly what it is. It's, as a sport consumer, what do I want? And the people that are giving out the entertainment, how do you deliver it to them? And I'll touch on a little later is I work with the Niagara Ice Dogs, or the OHL, in downtown St. Catharines. And I've seen, even though we won the conference championship 2 years ago, we're doing very well. There was not to say there's no one coming to the games, but there was a lot of empty seats being left open. Our team's not making revenue. And as a sport management student specifically, and as we're taking sport marketing, I took one high school sport marketing course, but it didn't really deep dive into stuff that we learned about in this sports marketing class, which I really love. But as a sport marketing student, and what you and all the other profs are teaching me is, how do I fix that problem? What are the ways that I could fix that problem? The only experience I had in sport marketing, honestly, was a grade 11 course that I took. So it was nice to get into sport marketing this semester with my peers who were probably in the exact same situation as myself, and to tap into stuff that I've learned in my first year at Brock, and also at other courses that I've been taking so far this semester, like entrepreneurship, the 5 force models, and the PR, which I'll be touching on a little later in my ePortfolio. But I found it very interesting that everything that we've learned this year, I've been learning in my other courses at Brock, which is, I think, exactly how it should be. I feel like it should be a domino effect, and you're always building on top of your courses. No matter the year, obviously, it's better to start early, but I feel like touching on different things, especially with marketing, how it relates to so much, because marketing is everywhere. If you look at the hockey photo here on the screen, look at the advertisement. It's everywhere. Marketing is always there. You are always in sports. The boards in the NHL, marketing. Gatorade is everywhere you look in the NFL. In soccer or football, it's everywhere. Basketball, it's now in the jerseys. Sport marketing is everywhere. And I believe as a sport management student, we should be touching on that always, because it's such an important part of sports and such an important part of who we are as sport management students, is how are we understanding and how are we using this to excel sports, and how are we using this to attach and attract consumers. Sports is definitely something that has the ability, it does touch every part of the world, and it has a way to touch everyone. When you look at the theory of participation, which is something that I was unaware of before taking this course, looking at the different strength of connections, if you fall in between awareness and allegiance, you're still somehow involved in sports. Sports is everywhere when you think about it. Driving, on TVs, commercials, it's everywhere. On Twitter, social media, which I'll be touching into later. But I feel like the sports industry has the opportunity to get into every market and has the opportunity to go be everywhere. And I think it does. I think it does a very good job of that. And when you think of the 3 sectors of sport, the government, the nonprofit, and the corporate, I feel like first of all, it employs a large amount of people. It's everywhere. It's all over TV. And it includes everywhere from the athletes who are getting paid millions of dollars, to the manufacturers, to the clubs, to the general managers, to the fans. All the stakeholders are involved. And the size of the sports industry can be measured in different ways. Originally, what I thought, if you think of the size of the sports industry, okay, how much money does this person make? How much money does this league make? But one thing that I learned in this class, which I never really thought of, was how many people are employed in the industry? How many people volunteer? Myself, I volunteer with Brock. As part of our 1P92 course last year, we had to volunteer with Brock. Then we had to discuss the different sectors in which we worked in. And it's very difficult to analyze the global impact that sport does. But there's usually a idea of how it's all about the money. And it's not. It's about the fans. Obviously, money is a part of it, but it's about different sectors, the loyalty, the products, the fans. What drives fans to love sports and what makes them come back every day, which makes the global industry successful. Touching back on earlier when I talked about Kyle Dubas and inspiration and really getting down to the nitty gritty of the sport marketing of the world and how global it is, I believe that learning about the people and learning about the fans, as I talked about earlier, will really help me further my career in the sports management. And when I'm thinking about what implications could this do, this really opens up my eyes for how there's so many different markets. Earlier, before I came to sports management, when I think of sports, I thought of professional leagues. I thought of NHL, NBA, the English Premier League, all the big sporting leagues. But now, when I think of sports, I think of the Olympics, I think of nonprofits, I think of volunteering, and it's really opened up my eyes for the different sectors. So where my goal has always been to work in sports, now it's not just narrowed down to professional leagues. Professional leagues is what I think I want to do. I still have time to think, and I still have time to grow, and I still have time to get more interests and network. But now it really expands and opens up the doors for myself for the future. And I think that the sport marketing course and all the courses I'm taking really opens up my eyes for there's more options out there, and there's so many doors that yet have been opened for me that will really help me further on my career. And all the different sectors opens the doors for all sport management students. When we look at challenges for sport marketers, we have to look at how do we engage the fans, which are our customers, in an intelligent and informed way. Do we do that by giving people free tickets? Do we do that by content, free merchandise? We also have to figure out who are our consumers. How do we get people into the seats and fans to watch our product, our entertainment? And we have to look at sport as sport and also sport as a business. And there's different ways to look at that. When we look at the different environments, the macro and micro and the consumer environment. When we look at the macro environment, it's the big picture, the mega environment. We talked about in the class, beyond the sphere of control. You want to respond and then shape compared to the micro environment where you rather shape rather than respond. It's closer to home. You have more control. Then when you look at the consumers, who are our consumers? And the key challenge for sport marketers is how do we identify potential consumers? And when we talk about consumers, we're talking about fans. And we have to understand fans. We have to understand that today, what motivates fans? We have to understand, why do fans want to come watch our product? Why do fans want to be fans? And how do we understand and influence the purchases of our fans? How do we make money? And how do we get people in the seats like I just talked about? There's individual motivations. There's me, myself, who's been brainwashed to be a Toronto sport fan my whole life. But it's the different interest levels from a wide variety of different people. Talking about the latter end of week 3, I really liked our discussion on esports and should esports be introduced as a module in the SPMA. And I really liked this discussion because I was able to reflect on, as a kid, my parents did not allow video games in the house. So I always was going outside, playing basketball, playing road hockey with other kids, or inside playing PlayStation, Xbox. And that was so interesting for me because I would be in a very weak target market, which really funneled into our discussion in this class, because I would probably say no before coming to Brock, but now as I'm at Brock and I see the evolution of esports and how competitive it is now with the tournaments, and then there's people making millions of dollars. It was really cool to see how much it's changed from when I was a kid to now studying at Brock. So that was really cool. But then diving into the target market and what's important about that and market segmentation. When we look at market segmentation, it's the process of dividing a market into meaningful groups. So when you look at why that's important, is you look at the gender, the age, the ethnicity, and the markets can be better defined by the needs of the customers. And when we look at the criteria for segmentation, we look at accessibility, the income. Do I have money? Going back to the esports, do I have money to purchase a console that will let me take in part in this? Am I interested? And for myself, I've never been interested at all in video games or esports, that we like to call it now. There's the user rate, there's the benefits, there's the market density. And when we look at the family life cycle as well, how old are these kids? So there's people like me who are teenagers coming into university who have been playing video games their whole life. They would be statistically, they should be very interested in studying esports coming into university, as they've been playing this their whole life. So it's important in the steps to segmenting markets. It's the selecting the profiles that you want to target as the people. So looking back at esports, you want to be targeting the people who have been playing video games their whole life and who will be interested in taking part in esports as either a course or a module. And you have to design and implement a plan and maintain a marketing mix that you could go after your target market and make sure that an esports module would be beneficial at Brock in the sports management program. When we looked at sport events and the attendance and the motives of attendance, I really liked how I was able to tie this into myself as I work with the Niagara Ice Dogs on a game day operation event staff. When we look at the motives for people to attend, first of all, we have to think of, why do sport managers care so much? Well, first of all, you need people in the seats to be able to make money. If people aren't coming to your game, you're not making money. And if we look at St. Catharines, for example, it has approximately 133,000 people. So that's a decent enough market to be able to host a team like the Niagara Ice Dogs of the Ontario Hockey League. When we look at the demographics, there's a couple ways to be able to break it down. We talked about the cost of replacing a spectator, and this really stood out to me because I'd never heard of this. And when I think about it, and when you said it, it really makes sense of how replacing a spectator can be 6 times the cost of retaining one. And to me, that really stood out because I was thinking, that's so true. Because to get a new spectator, like the gentleman that went up in front of the class who changed from a Montreal Canadiens fan to a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, obviously, kudos to that guy. Welcome to the good side. But when we think about it, that would be so tough and expensive. Like, if I think about how many Toronto Maple Leafs hats I have. I have a jersey hanging up in my room right now. I have so many things from one brand that to switch would be very, very tough for both sides, the party and the organization. I did know that men are more likely to attend, and also we discussed how men are more covered in media, which is something that I already knew, but the really thing that pointed out the most was the cost of replacing a spectator. And the sport attendance seems to be easy and simple, but it's very complex when we break it down. We talked about the speed. The SPEED stands for socialization, performance, excitement, esteem, and diversion. And when we really break these down, these five themes reflect the motivational factors and what drives people to be fans and to attend sporting events. So when we look at socialization, it's the chance to socialize with others. It's going with a friend, it's going with a colleague, it's grabbing a beer after the game or a dinner before the game. You can make a night out of it. It's an opportunity to interact with your friends and also interact with people who are fans of the same thing. I get to interact while I'm at Ice Dogs games with people who are fans of the Niagara Ice Dogs. When we look at performance, you have to respect the gift of the athletes, and you have to accept the natural elegance of the game. You have to look at these players and say, wow, they trained their whole life for this, especially the Ice Dogs players, how they're just kids training their whole life to reach a goal. It's also exciting. For hockey, for example, because I'm tying it to the Niagara Ice Dogs, it's fast, there's hitting, goals, horns, everything that you are excited to go watch the game. It's the skill, and you find it very exciting. When we look at esteem, it's, do I feel like I win if the team wins? Do I feel accomplished if I go to a Niagara Ice Dogs game? If they win, do I win? Do I feel accomplished as a fan when they win? And the last is diversion, is as a student, I have a routine. I'm told to go to class from this time to this time, to do homework from this time to this time, to eat from this time to this time, then go to sleep, wake up, do it all over again. It gives me a chance to go and change up my routine. It gives me a break with the tension of school and the tension of life. And sticking quickly with the Niagara Ice Dogs is, I feel like to be an effective sport manager, and that's something that I want to be in the future, it's how do I understand these tactics? How can I feed off veterans? How can I feed off other employees? And how would that make me a better sport manager? So how will me taking in and soaking in as much information from my peers that I work with, how can that make me a better sport manager? And I think that will always give me a trickle-down effect when I'm looking at how to be successful. And I feel like that's something that I improved the most on, because like I said before, when I was younger and before I came to Brock for sports management, all I thought was, how will I make millions of dollars for a sports team? How could the Toronto Maple Leafs be worth $1.5 billion when it's just a hockey team? And that kind of funnels into something that I didn't really associate with sports, and that's the trademarks. And when we look at the Canadian Trademarks Act of 1985, we look at 3 different types of trademarks. And these are not overall something I didn't know, because I understood the trademarks with sports. You hear about it, but it's not something I really thought it was that big of a deal in a way. And the first, a trademark is a sign that is used or intended to be used to distinguish goods or services from other services. So it could be a letter, a name, a signature, a shape, a sound, for example. It could be a color, it could be a word, it could be anything. And for a trademark to become property of an organization, it has to be registered. And once registered, the owner has now the exclusive rights to use the trademarks or to authorize other people to use the trademarks. And when we see trademarks, we see a thing called royalty fees. And on average, that's about 6 to 8%, and is paid for the usage of the intellectual property. And when we talk about intellectual property, I really liked how, after learning about this, and I went to law, the sport law class with Dr. Fogel, we had a whole lecture on intellectual property. And when we think of intellectual property, you first think of, well, for me at least, I think of law. I don't think of sports marketing. But when you tie it into sports marketing, you can tap into, okay, that does make sense, right? Then when you think of the different types of trademarks, when we look at licensing, so for example, licensing is the act of granting another party to the right of your logo, to your design, goes back to intellectual property. Licensing is granting an intellectual property from the right of the licensor to the licensee. And when we go back to trademarks, if you look at an ordinary mark, which is the made up of words, the sounds or the designs or the combination, we look at the certification mark, which can be licensed to many people or companies, anything for the purpose of showing that certain goods or services meet a defined standard. And last, when we look at distinguishing guides, is about the shape or the goods or the containers or any way of wrapping or packaging goods. And that shows they have been made by a specific individual. And for me, that's important to know because I really liked how we learn about the sport licensing and how I go from never understanding it's not understanding, but never being able to tie it to sports to now, because sports is just booming and it's arguably been the biggest it's ever been and it's continuing to grow. So why do we care about sport licensing growth? Well, technology is going on the rise and it's going to continue rising above and above. There's more fans, there's more supports, arenas are getting bigger. You're fitting 100,000 people into a stadium. And now it's more important than ever to be able to control and to protect. And I feel like if I'm able to learn and be able to, in a way, master the trademarks and the licensing and understanding how important that is, I feel like that will make me a better sport manager in the future. And I feel like that's an area, and that is also an area that I've improved the most, of understanding more of the business of sports, not just the sports, not just the product on the field or the ice, but really understanding the business of sports has made me a better sport manager, a better sport marketer, which is able to feed into every subject that I study here at Brock. I think I'm able to look back at the Gibbs reflection cycle and relate it to the fact that I didn't really know much about licensing and trademarks, different things like that coming to Brock. So I also don't think I was alone when it came to having the lack of knowledge when it came. I've always seen the TM or the R or the limited beside the names, but I wasn't really sure what they meant, to be honest. That's why I think it was cool learning about the licensing and why is it so important to trademark and what are the benefits of licensing that as a sport manager I will be able to use that in the future, as now I understand the importance of it, where before I came into not just sports management but sport marketing in 2P65, how valuable it is now. So I'll be able to use that for the future to better understand my knowledge and to better myself as a sports manager. I'm going to quickly touch on my fall reading week and how I was able to actually connect this to our course. And what I mean by that is during our fall reading week, we had the OUA Golf Championship. And while I was there, thinking back now, I could really connect that week to our course because while I was there, every sponsor from RBC to different companies like TaylorMade, the towel companies, to Mr. Peanut was there, going back to when you talked about the national anthem being sponsored. Why is Mr. Peanut sponsoring the OUA Golf Championship, right? So it goes back to how sponsorship is everywhere. No matter, it's not just the pros, it's everywhere. And that also goes back to the sectors, how before I was programmed to think, okay, the only spectrum sport is like the big multi-billion-dollar teams. Now I can look at that sponsorship isn't just in the commercial sector. It isn't just the big sporting events. Sponsorship runs through everything sport related. It's, as I could see here, I was running through the OUA Golf Championship. So I found that really cool to see how sponsorship and marketing is everywhere. It's hard to argue against how in today's world and how our society is so driven by technology that translates exactly into sports and how us as fans view our teams. It's highlighted that the fans almost need to be engaged with the team at all times. Me, myself, I follow all of my favorite sport teams in Toronto. Fans like to engage with their players, and PK Subban of the Nashville Predators said a really good quote once, and that was that himself as a person is a brand on a cell phone, on the ice, on Twitter, when he's speaking in front of people. And that effort by the players to brand themselves is what people as fans like to see and what people in sports like to see. The cost of social media effectively is nothing. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the newsletters that you talk about in class all the time. That's all free. And for sports teams to tap into that and use that and drive into the fans themselves across multiple different platforms is very important for the success to all stakeholders of the team. And the purpose of this is to engage with the fans, for the fans to engage with the team, with other fans, with the players. And I think that's very important to drive up fan interest and fan loyalty. I went on my Instagram today and looked at the different teams that I follow from Toronto. I'm a big sports fan. I follow almost every sport. And I have to admit, I've been brainwashed to like Toronto sport teams, as my father has been a huge Toronto sport fan his whole life, and he really got me into sports. As you see, I follow the Maple Leafs, the Toronto FC of the MLS, the Toronto Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays Center, which is one of the top fan pages, giving out daily reports and debates where fans can interact with each other, and the Toronto Raptors. And this goes to show you how, for example, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have 1.8 million followers. Obviously, I can't assume that if I send them a direct message that they're going to answer me back. Or if I'm one of the people who are heckling the team saying, trade this guy, fire this guy, obviously I don't do that, and I can't expect for the team to message me back. But it's still a thing where I can go on Twitter or Instagram in this situation, and if the team's playing, they'll have behind the scenes video. They'll have vote for the fan of the game. They'll have quizzes. They'll have in-game activities, which as a fan I love because I get to interact with the teams at all time, whether it's during the off season, whether it's during the game, whether it's a giveaway during the season. So I believe how just using Toronto sports teams as an example, because they're my favorite, it's a perfect way for me to be able to be engaged and feel welcome and feel loved and feel proud to be a fan of these teams. When we looked at week 8 and the different types of events, we really got in the nitty-gritty of, is it beneficial enough for a city to host an event? And there's two different types of events that we'll look at the beginning here, and that's a worldwide event, which could be the Olympics, the Commonwealth Games, or more of a world circuit event like the Tour de France or the Champions League final. And if we look at special events, there's 4 types of special events that we could put into groups. The first one's being a mega event, which would be the Olympics, which is a competitive bidding process, and it could really revamp the country and city's economy for the host. Look at hallmark events. It's an event that becomes synonymous with the name of the place. So that would be something like the Tour de France. So the cycling tour going through France is significant because it's aligned with the country of France. Then when we look at local events, we can look at smaller, more regional communities that can still give a significant tourist, but it won't change the landscape of the country in a way. So that could be small events like the Toronto Marathon or the Boston Marathon. The Boston Marathon will bring tourists in. People will go to watch it because it's the Boston Marathon, but it won't change the city's economy for many years. And if we look at a major event, that's something that will attract media coverage and produce economic benefits, but it still is almost in between the local events like the Boston Marathon and the Olympics. And when we're looking at attracting events to a thing, again, looking at the event bidding focuses solely on the host city. And when you're focusing on the city, it usually will come down to the facilities. And we look at Olympics in the past time and understanding how countries will go into billions of dollars of debt just to be able to host an event. We saw that in the Sochi Olympics, billions and billions and billions of dollars given out by the Russian government to host the event. And this is important because as a sport manager, the big events are the marquee events that attracts worldwide attention, like the Olympics, for example, the Commonwealth Games, stuff like that. And it's important for me as a sport manager that there's different aspects of just putting out the plan to host the event. There's the politics. The political aspects is a lot of support, and it's a very key part of bidding as a politician, saying how if I get into office, I will or I will not bid, for example, the 2026 Olympics in Calgary. There's policies that can contribute to the politician for the long time well-being of him in being office. Then we look at the impact of the economics, and that part of the aspects is the big businesses and corporations like Visa, different multi-billion dollar industries want to be involved. They see the economic benefits of being the official partner of this official partner of this. And as well, the holding of major games is important for tourism because it attracts new visitors and it can keep visitors coming back for a very long time. For example, when the Vancouver Olympics were held in 2010, Whistler, they still have the major rings, and it's a massive tourist attraction for people, which will give them tourist media coverage, different things that helps them brand their facility. And that's very important for me as a sport manager when I'm thinking about it, because it's again all about the people. I have to be able to weigh the pros and cons, and I have to understand that there's certain places, for example, for third world countries who don't have the infrastructure in place. And actually, funny enough, that my history course that I'm learning about African pirates from my elective talks about how for the most part, the eastern coast of Africa has no infrastructure, that they're getting devastated by different things like pirates and everything. There's no economic infrastructure at all. So for a very long time, they won't be able to get the media coverage. They won't be able to host a game like this. And eventually that will destroy their tourism industry and not be able to get the media attention that will be able to benefit them in the long term. And when understanding the different types of events, it would be very valuable for me to understand what to look for and what to have when planning an event. So if you get into a situation where you have to plan an event, it will be very valuable to understand what type of event and what to be expected. And for the different types of events, the people attending will be expecting different things. So that's what will be valuable for me to understand what to learn and know how to make a plan for my event to be as successful as possible. When we think about sponsorship, I think it ties really well into what we previously learned about the image of what a brand represents. So when you think of Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Connor McDavid, any star athlete, any generational talent, you think of the company's sponsorship as himself. When you think of Tiger Woods, you think of Nike. When you think of LeBron James, you again think of Nike. When you think of Lionel Messi, you think of Adidas. Their image directly correlates to their company. So why is the sponsorship industry globally worth so much money? It's worth $37.7 billion. And now why? Most of it comes with the cost of advertising, which has suggested that LeBron James has been paid $1 billion by Nike. If that's true or not, that goes to show you how important it is to sponsor and how expensive it is. It's a very meaningful platform to market a product. With sports, the events are watched by millions and millions of people. You see companies, for example, like Pepsi, who pay millions of dollars for a 3-second image of their logo right before the start of the Super Bowl. Different things like that. And when we think of sponsorship, it's defined by the business relationships between a sport or an organization or an event and a corporation for mutual benefit. So if I'm LeBron James and if I'm Nike, Nike sponsoring LeBron will benefit LeBron because Nike's paying LeBron, but LeBron will help Nike benefit because people who watch LeBron James and idolize him for his talents will think of Nike when they think of LeBron James. So some other benefits is that it invokes a personal attachment. Again, going back to LeBron James, because he's one of the biggest sports stars in the world, it gives the fan and emotional attachment towards the player than towards the brand and the company. Originally for myself, marketing wasn't something that I saw as so lucrative and important, but it's really important to understand the different brand associations when it comes to a company. So the example of the Nike brand association set that I have up on the screen there, when you think of Nike as a whole and the different divisions, it goes into golf, into tennis, into soccer, into basketball. If you take golf, it goes to Tiger Woods, then to formerly Rory McIlroy, then all the clubs and down. When you think of tennis, you think of Roger Federer, you think of everything that he's accompanied with. You think of the shoes he uses, the rackets he uses, the headbands he uses, everything Nike. And that's very important because the sponsor wants to be able to hook the consumer, which will give the consumer an emotional attachment to the company of Nike. And the branding is also very important for the company for it to be successful. You want to be able to tap into the customer's interest and get their respect and get their attention for possible future buys, which is what the company is looking for. Unfortunately, in some instances, we see something called, when looking at the sponsor effect model and looking at the different stages as a sport marketer and the different objectives of sponsorship, I think it's really important to look at the different stages from top to bottom about how to first hook your consumer, but then to be able to keep the relationship with your consumer for the future gains. And we look at attention, which is the beginning stage. Then you move down to the interest, which is the more of the business development and the brand positioning of your consumers. We go down to the desire. So that's, in my opinion, one of the most important stages. It's the attention to purchase whatever product you're giving. Then we move down into that action, which is increasing sales, the employee relationships, the brand relationship, the brand image. Even though the brand image obviously has to be very strong throughout, I believe that once you go down into the post-purchase, every stage is very important to have the right image and to be successful. And I see that working at my own golf courses. Why should the consumer come to my golf course? What takes my golf course and puts it a level above the other golf courses? And as we can feed off of what we just learned with sponsorship and how we can differentiate yourself from our competitors, we can look at the service marketing triangle. And that is the correlation between the service quality, which is the spectator or is the consumer or is the participant happy about the service that it's getting? Then we look at customer satisfaction. It's exactly the same. It's in a way a judgment of the consumer or the judgment of whoever's taking part in anything. Are they satisfied? And will they take something out of this activity or this event or any experience? And we look at the triangle. There's 4 different parts. First of all is internal marketing. That's the verbal communications. That's the direct me to you marketing. Then there's the external marketing, which we just touched upon with advertisements, sponsorships, licensing, what we talked about before. So everything is coming into this one triangle. That's why this sport marketing triangle is one of the best diagrams that we learned in this class and one of the biggest topics that I feel like I'll be able to take out of when during my sport management career, because everything falls into this. It's all about people. It's a people business. We want to get as many people and as many consumers as we can. And there's different ways to do this. And one way to look at this is the customer gaps. And when I talk about customer gaps, it's the relationships between what I, as an employee, will give to my customer. And I'm going to tie this back again to golf because I feel like golf is a great example when talking about customers because I deal with customers in person, over the phone, all day long. And to be frank, I don't think the customers really care that I'm making minimum wage. They're paying their $100. They're away from their families all day. They want the best experience that they want. And it is my job to give them the best experience that I want. And there are different ways to close these gaps and to eliminate these gaps fully. Number one is the knowledge. I have to be knowledgeable. And this doesn't relate just to golf. This relates to everything. This relates to everything in life. And this is what will help me further my career in sports management. Because talking to customers, gaining information of my job, gaining information of the market is very, very good way to make sure that the customer's experience is the best possible experience. This ties back into why should the golfer come back to my golf course? I want to make sure that when he leaves my golf course, he had the best experience that he can. And that will further, if he's in between my golf course and another golf course, he'll come back to my golf course. It's all about the training of my employees. It's all about the pride of working, coming to work every day. You as a professor, you come dressed sharp. You can show up with sweatpants. You can show up with a hoodie. When I'm at work, I have clean clothes, shirt, collar, name tag, clean shaved, everything. It's all about the teamwork and the systems and the quality of the employees. It's about being knowledgeable of the capabilities of the employee themselves and the capabilities of their firm. It's all about teamwork and to give the best experience as possible. We're learning about public relations and cause-related marketing and corporate social responsibility. It's important to understand that all of them deal with communication, but in a way they're all a little bit different in their own respectable manner. When looking at public relations, it's usually a controlled form of communication coming within your own organization, delivered to external fans, any stakeholder involved with the team. It's getting an event more publicity, hyping it up in a way. It's influencing policies, it's talking to fans, it's identifying topics, it's controlling dangerous topics, as you hear sometimes saying a PR nightmare. It uses a number of activities or programs to deliver their fans the plan in place for the team. In a way, it's related to cause-related marketing, and the best way to describe cause-related marketing is going back to last year when J.J. Watt of the Houston Texans raised millions and millions of dollars for the city of Houston after that devastating hurricane hit their city. It wasn't a way for J.J. Watt to make extra money. He wasn't thinking about the possible extra monetary gains that he could gain. It was more rallying behind him and having an outlet for people in his city to rally behind him in a time of need. In most cases, you don't do it for the income or for profits. It's for a non-profit cause. And the efficiency of cause-related marketing is leveraging a perceived fit, and it increases credibility, and it increases the love, and maybe takes off the idea of the negative event or whatever is happening. When we look at corporate responsibility, it's the commitment of your team, for example, and we're looking at the sport marketing, to benefit or improve the community. It's the responsibility of the team to make me feel wanted. So if I'm a fan, and I am a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, as a fan and a stakeholder, I want to feel proud to be a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I want to feel proud to be a Brock Badger. And that's the job of the corporate, and that's, as it's called, the social responsibility. It's not to make money, and in a way it is all about the money, but it's more continuing to commit their business to make me feel welcome and to improve my experience cheering for the team. I'm going to talk quickly about Reuben Foster, a professional football player that you see on the screen there. Mr. Foster is a very highly talented inside linebacker, formerly for the San Francisco 49ers. He came out of the University of Alabama a couple years ago. He was a first-round draft pick, a very, very good young player. But on February 11th, Foster was arrested from suspicion of domestic violence, threats, and assault weapons, marijuana charges. He's been arrested 3 times in 2018. So the San Francisco 49ers made the decision to cut him, which is a very understandable move on part of San Francisco. They don't want to be seen to condemn violence as the actions that Mr. Foster has been accused against him. But right after he was cut, the Washington Redskins, the NFL, claimed him. And this was a move that was criticized by many, including myself. I don't personally agree with it. Many people have spoken about the disgust in a way, and I will call it disgust on part of the Washington Redskins. In a way, people have viewed this move as the Washington Redskins putting the product on the field and wins over the ethics of the organization and for the views that they stand for. So this is a move that lacks, in my opinion, corporate responsibility, but also shines as the 49ers did their due diligence by cutting him and showing ethics within corporate responsibilities. And now the Washington Redskins have been criticized for their corporate social responsibility and essentially have turned a PR nightmare for themselves and their organization and their fans. As we moved into week 12, we really were able to go back and what we learned in week 9 about sponsorship and how important it is for organizations to be able to reach out to different consumers. When we look at sponsor fit is broadly defined by a strategy between the sponsorship and the service that you're providing. It's all about targeting your audience of who you want to sponsor to. And when you're a consumer, and I can speak for many people here, you want credibility, you want trust. And that's really important to be able to give out that image and, again, we've talked about it many times, and show the brand of your product or your whatever you're giving out to the consumers. If your company ever has done something unethical, that has the opportunity to stray consumers away. And unfortunately, that's the thing of goodwill. You want to be able to be proud to represent a brand. You want to be able to be proud to be able to be associated with a certain brand. When we look at the difference between sponsoring an individual and organization, I ran across some things I've never really thought of, to be honest, with the pros and cons of sponsoring a high-profile athlete or an organization. When we're looking at a high-profile athlete, we usually think of the cons of it could reach different markets, it reaches a wide variety of people, it has a chance to bring in awesome profits, but sometimes a con we don't really think of. It's something that I've never thought of, is that when you use a high-profile athlete or a high-profile celebrity, you run the risk of the product that you're trying to sponsor through that athlete or celebrity can be overshadowed. And that's a very important thing to remember as a sport marketer for myself, is that's something I never really thought of, how important it is to be able to convey your message the proper way. And when using a single athlete or single celebrity, it brings with it a risk of something unethical happening, some way or somehow there's uncontrollable factors that you don't know that can happen. When we talk about credibility and what customers want to see from other people, I like to tie it back to my job working at golf courses. Last summer, to help pay for my school, I worked at 2 different golf courses, Bradford Highlands in Bradford, Ontario, and Mill Run Golf Club in Uxbridge, Ontario. And as you can see on the left side there, the comment that says, "Young guy in the pro shop was great, got me in for quick 9. I'm the only young guy, as he called it, in the pro shop. So this is talking about me. To be honest, I can't remember this encounter, but I feel like comments like that is perfect to get a customer back. Even though it is my job, and the customer will take it as I went out of my way to help them, I believe that customer service, obviously customer service comes first in any job. You always want to have a smile on your face, even though sometimes you don't want to have a smile on your face. But this customer here will remember that I help him get out for a quick 9, even though I was doing my job. That's the credibility that he might want. So if he's tossed between 2 different golf courses to go back to, golf course A, which could be my golf course, and golf course B, which could be a different golf course, if he remembers the encounter with me, the customer service and the trust and the credibility and the loyalty to him, I feel like that'd be perfect for him to come back to the golf course. Last thing that I'm going to talk about is golf. And for this topic, it was really interesting for me to see different opinions of my peers when we're talking about golf in the classroom in one of our lectures after reading that document. And for me, first of all, it was a lot of negative opinions and views from people, and I didn't really want to call anyone out, even though I could, but some factual information that wasn't true, but we don't have to get into that. I would say a couple decades ago, the idea was that they would build up many, many golf courses. Then once the baby boomers go into retirement, they're going to turn to golf at field leisure. And they do, but they kind of overestimated the market. And that was interesting for me to learn. I learned that a couple of years ago. It's very interesting for me to learn because it does happen a lot. People overestimate markets, and that's an important aspect of being a sport manager, is being able to estimate markets and using your knowledge of the business and the people to be able to give out a good estimate so things like this don't happen like it did to golf. And now it's really starting to hurt golf courses as they have to start charging so much money that essentially it's becoming a little ridiculous. As I work in pro shop at a golf course, if you came to my golf course on a Saturday at 9 a.m. a foursome, you'll be paying $400, $100 a person. So that foursome is the equivalent to about 80% of my monthly rent, to put it into perspective, which to me is an absurd amount of money to pay for someone to play golf. And I'm not bashing golf. Golf is my life essentially, but I think it's important to understand, where is it going? Where is golf going to go? And I believe that golf is still going to be around. We had the one gentleman in our classroom talk about how it's going to be like bowling, respectively. I disagree. I believe that golf is still a big part of society, and it's a big part of business. The people that don't understand that it's a very important part of business, colleagues, corporate tournaments, different things like that. I feel like golf's still going to be around, but there's going to have to be something to be changed about the price, because the price is too much. The newest driver, $650 retail price. A box of balls, Titleist Pro V1's box of balls like $68. It's absurd. And to get millennials into golf, there has to be, in my opinion, a complete revamp. And I can really reflect on the fact that I understand why golf is so expensive. I understand the business of running a golf course and how expensive it is, and the salaries and the different things that go into it. But I still believe that there's going to have to be different things that be done to the golf industry. And that's important for us and my peers who all have the same interests, is what can we do to change this? And I think doing things like foot golf is a perfect idea, to have it on the golf premises. So if I never play golf in my life, but I play foot golf and I see the golf course there, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe I'll give it a try. There's different deals. When I go down south with my dad in the breaks, the March break in high school or reading weeks, we go down to Hilton Head. There's courses I go to where you pay your age. So as a 19-year-old, I'll play. If I get to play golf every day for $19, I'll do that. But I don't want to pay $100 a day, right? So I think it's important to understand that something has to be done to change golf. And that's not just for golf, it's for different sports, but just focusing on golf. I feel like if we are able to pool our thoughts and be able to tap in the knowledge that we know about people and what drives people to attend things, and going back to speed, if you want to be excited, you want to be attracted to the event. So if we can get people attracted to golf for the right price, I think we'll definitely be able to get golf to a high level and to be able to sustain at a very high level for a very long time. as I can now wrap up my ePortfolio, I'd first like to thank you for taking the time to listening to my portfolio. I love this class. I love your methods as a professor. I love everything about sports marketing, and I feel like sports marketing will be able to help me so much in my career and on my journey to reach my goals. And I appreciate your time. Have a good day.